How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Chav Gimel, Daf 23 of Masechta Shevuos, friends. Your friends. Alright, here we go. It might be a long daf, I don't know. I have today's Lag Boimer. I was out last night and whatever, we left early and I didn't have a chance to record yesterday, so today's Friday. I got to record 3 today. So I don't even know what's what anymore. I've already learned 3 daf that I need to record. Sorry, Mom. So anyways, I don't know why I'm saying this, but the point is we're just going to learn and it's going to be great. Okay. We're starting Chav Beis Amud Beis at the Mishnah about 15-20 lines from the bottom of Chav Beis Amud Beis. So we got a little bit of work to do, but it's mostly this kind of large-ish Mishnah. Okay. Shevuos shelo oichal. Okay, so if a person says, I won't eat, this is taka interesting Tosfos. I usually don't learn Tosfos, but I don't know, I kind of recently I've had this taiva to learn Tosfos. So it's a good taiva to have, I guess. So I'm poking around a little bit. So Tosfos has an interesting kasha on Daf Chav Hey. Basically, what does it mean that shelo ochal, I'm never going to eat forever? That's ridiculous, right? So Tosfos has a kasha. He says taka nidarim, right? Since the opinion of a Yochanan, a person says I'm not going to sleep for 3 days. So that's crazy. So we beat him and say go to sleep. And I think I joked about that in the Nidarim already. I'll go upon him. So how can he say I'm not going to eat? So I think the point is, so he gives 2 answers. So let's just say it means I'm not going to eat now. Okay, he's not saying I'm not going to eat ever, but it almost reminds me of that scenario from the other day. His grandmother's chasing him around with the Brussels sprouts. He says I'm not going to eat. Doesn't mean I'm not going to eat forever. It just means get out of my face. All right. Shevuos shelo oichal. So a person says I'm not going to eat. Shevuos I'm not going to eat. Ve'ochal v'shoso. And take, he ate. Not only did he eat, he went mahajim. He not only ate, he drank too. So the shaila is he chayav once or twice? And chayav al-achas, he's only chayav 1 korban shvuah. Of course, this is if he eats or drinks by accident. Shevuos shelo oichal v'shelo eshte v'ochal v'shasa chayav shtayim. If he makes a shvuah that I'm not going to eat, shvuah that I'm not going to drink, and then he eats and he drinks, so in that case he's chayav twice. So if he says Shevuos shelo ochal and he eats and drinks, he's only chayav once. If he says Shevuos shelo ochal, Shevuos shelo eshte, and he eats and drinks, he's chayav twice. Shevuos shelo oichal, he says I'm not going to eat. Ve'ochal paschitin, ufas soirin, ufas kusmin. He says I'm not going to eat, and then he eats 3 different types of breads: wheat bread, barley bread, spelt bread. In chayav al-achas is only chayav 1 korban shvuah. Shevuos shelo oichal paschitin, ufas soirin, ufas kismin. But if he specifies the 3 types of breads, v'ochal, and he eats them, chayav kol achas v'achas, he's going to be chayav a korban shvuah for each bread that he eats. Korban olav yored. Shevuah shelo eshte. He says, Shvuah, that I'm not going to drink. V'shasa mashkin harbe, drinks all sorts of mashkes, wine, honey, oil. And chayav al-achas is only chayav once. Shevuos shelo eshte yayin v'shemen v'dvash v'shasa. If he says, Shvuah, that I'm not going to eat wine and oil and honey, chayav kol achas v'achas, he's going to be chayav for each one. There's this honey that I recently bought. There's this honey that I recently bought. Let me tell you about this honey. The thing about this honey that I just bought is that it's too good. This honey is too good. That's the problem with this honey, is that it's too good. What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is that usually I don't eat honey straight out of the jar. usually I put it in tea, I put it in, maybe yogurt or something. Like for me, and I imagine for lots of people, honey is the kind of thing that you like mix together with other things. You don't just eat it with a spoon out of a jar. The problem with this honey is that it's so good that it's a waste to just put it in a cup of tea, where you're like not going to be able to appreciate the honey. You kind of just need to eat it out of the jar with a spoon, which is, is, I don't know. It's like not, I don't know. That just is what it is. So, yeah. Koponim. Hillel, if you're interested, is at the Mizrahi fruits and vegetable place. They have these honeys there that they sell. Those honeys, you push it. You just eat it out of the. It's like not viscous. It's like thick. It's almost like a candy. You chew it. I'm telling you. Okay. Shevuos shelo eshte v'shosha mashkin arbe. Ein chayv elachas. Shevuos shelo eshte yain v'shem v'dvash. Chayv kol achas v'achas. Shevuos shelo oichal v'chol ochlin she'ein v'uyin lachilo. If he makes a shvuah that he's not going to eat, but he does eat. But what does he eat? Things that you don't normally eat. I don't know. For example, dirt. He eats dirt. He's potter for that. Or he drinks drinks that are not drinkable. They're not fit for drinking. Potter. If he says shvuah that I'm not going to eat. He says I'm not going to eat. And then he eats nevelas, trefas, shkotzes, and ramosses. Chayav. The Tanakama Taka says he's chayav. Reb Shimon, poter. Okay. If he says konam ishti nenesli, that my wife, right? He makes a neder that his wife cannot get any benefit from me. Imachalti ayom, if I ate today. No, nenes li, no. How do you define shvuah? Konam ishti nenes li, to me. How do you define that literally? Is he saying that he's not going to get enough from his wife, or that his wife's not going to get enough from him? What does he say? Benefit from me shall be imparted to my wife? Yeah, I guess. Yeah. Okay. She can't get any enough from me if I ate today. Okay, where am I? V'u'achal. And he did eat that day. 1 second. Where am I? And he did eat that day. What did he eat? Nevelas, utrefis, shkotzim, uramosim. Right? So if he says that my wife is forbidden from getting any benefit from me if I ate anything today. And he did eat, but what he ate was nevelas, trefis, shkotzes, and uramosis. Nonetheless, ishto asura, she can't get any benefit from him. Okay, fine. I have some coffee here, by the way. Says the Gemara, Bar Ovin Omar Shmuel, Shevuos shelo ochal v'shasa chayv. So says Rav Chia Bar Ovin Omar Shmuel that if he says Shevuos shelo ochal, he makes a shvuah, I'm not going to eat. V'shasa, what does he do? He doesn't eat, but he drinks. Chayv. He's chayv for violating his shvuah. Very interesting. The shvuah was, I'm not going to eat. What did he do? He drank. And we're saying, there's takachai for violating his shvuah not to eat by drinking. I'll make an argument that it's logical, and I'll make an argument from a verse. First, I will make the logical argument. I'll tell you what, look. Itamar says to Geva, hey Geva, what do you say we go and get a bite? So they go to the pizza shop and they get pizza, and they also get sodas. Now Itamar never said anything about drinking, he just said let's get a bite. And yet they're drinking sodas. So you see that it's just when people talk about eating in Memele, it includes drinking as well. I feel like it's okay to use Itamar and Geva when when it's not like talking about like lending money and being like, making Shevuos and nechosim b'shabadim, right? For eating pizza and soda, I think we can use Itamar and Geva. Maybe that's a good pshar that we can make for our friend Ariel. Okay, I'm going to drink some more coffee. Now, okay. Alternatively, I will make my argument from a verse that we know that drinking is included in eating, because the verse says, "De Omar Rish Lakish," says Rish Lakish, how do we know that drinking is included in eating? Shenemar, because the verse says by Meiser Sheni. Meiser Sheni needs to be brought to Jerusalem and eaten in Jerusalem, or money brought to Jerusalem and food bought in Jerusalem. You will eat before the Rabbanu Shalom ba'mokem asher yivchar in Yerushalayim l'shakin shmesham meiser degancha v'siroshcha. Your tirosh. Who could tell me what tirosh is? The Gemara will tell us v'sirosh chamru. Tirosh is wine, and it says ve'achalta. It says you're eating wine. What does that mean? Apparently, drinking wine is included in ve'achalta, in eating. So there, eating includes drinking. V'dilma idea nigrin or frek de gemore. Maybe you are eating the wine. Maybe it's an ingredient in a food. Domer Rabbi Bashmuel anigrin mai de silke achsigrin maya de chulu shilke. That anigrin is some kind of a borscht, and achsigrin is some kind of a vegetable broth or something, vegetable soup. So maybe you're eating. So maybe you are eating the wine, because it's an ingredient in a dish. El Omer of Acha bar Yankiv, says of Acha bar Yaakov, mehocha, from this verse, also by Meiser Sheni, v'nosata kesef, that you could be poda the Meiser Sheni onto money, bring the money to Yerushalayim, and then v'nosata kesef, you will buy v'chol asher taiva nafshecha, whatever your heart desires. Like my heart desires to learn Tosfos. When we're talking about Meiser Sheni, your heart desires to buy boker, cows, uvatzon, sheeps, vayayin uvashecher, and wine and intoxicants. So yayin chamru, yayin of course is wine. Uchsiv in the Pasuk says ve'achalta, and it says there as well ve'achalta, and you're eating. So you're eating wine, even though you're really drinking the wine, but it's considered eating. V'doma chanami, idea nigrin. But maybe here as well, it's an ingredient in a dish, and you're eating it. Sheikh, yeah, but it says an intoxicant, midi de mishaker. Talking about something that gets you fashnikit, and I guess that's drinking wine. I guess when you cook it in a borscht, so probably the alcohol gets cooked out, I think. V'duma devela ki'ilis. But maybe when it says sheikher, it's referring to devela ki'ilis. Right? So maybe the wine is in a borscht, and the intoxicant is talking about devela ki'ilis, some kind of intoxicating fig. Do you think that they sell intoxicating figs in Shuk Machne Yehuda? Reb Hillel, have you ever seen an intoxicating fig in Shuk Machne Yehuda? If you know where to find them, I'd be interested to try one. Desanya, as we learn in the Brisa, if a person eats an intoxicating fig, and drinks honey and milk, and goes into the mikdash for avad chayev, and he goes into the Beis Hamikdash and he does avoda, okay, so he will be chayev for being intoxicated because he had an intoxicating fig. So we are struggling to prove from a verse that drinking is included in eating, because whenever we try to prove the drinking, we said, well, maybe it's actually talking about eating the wine. Ella gomer shecher minazir. Look, it says shecher here by Meiser Sheni, and it also says shecher by a nazir. Malalan yain afkan yain, just like by a nazir, we're talking about wine over there. So here also we're talking about wine, and therefore when we talk about shecher here by Meiser Sheni, we're talking about wine, and it says eating. So we see that drinking is included in eating. Azoy, I'm going to drink more coffee. Drinking is included in eating. I'm going to eat more coffee. I'm going to eat more coffee. I'm going to eat more coffee. Okay, I just ate more coffee. Amar Rava Afananami Tanina says, Rava, we ochit learn in our Mishnah that drinking is included in eating. Shevuos shaloi oichal, if he says I'm not going to eat, and he eats and he drinks, so the Mishnah felt the need to tell us that he's only chayev once. He said he's not going to eat, and then he eats and he drinks. He's only chayev once. The Mishnah felt a need to tell us that. Why did the Mishnah feel a need to tell us that? The Mishnah did not feel a need to tell us that he ate and he went for a jog, because obviously going for a jog would not be in violation of Shevuos shelo ochal. However, the Mishnah did feel the need to say that he is not chayev for drinking, because I would think that drinking would be, because drinking is included in eating, and therefore the Mishnah had to tell us that when he says Shevuos shelo ochal and he eats and he drinks, even though drinking is included in eating, nonetheless you're only chayev once. So you see from the fact that the Mishnah felt the need to tell us that you are not chayev additionally for your drink, it's because the Mishnah had to tell us that because drinking is included in eating. I understand if we say that drinking is included in eating. The Mishnah had to tell us that nonetheless, even though he ate and he drank, he's only going to be chayev once. But if you tell me that drinking is not included in eating, basically then what you're saying, right? So if you're saying that drinking is not included in eating, well then drinking is no different than like doing some kind of malacha, building a house. Does the Mishnah have to tell us that like if he says Shevuos shelo ochal and then he eats and he builds a house and he does malacha, that he's only chayev once? Obviously he's only chayev once. So if drinking is not included in eating and it's just a random activity, the Mishnah would not need to tell us that you're potter for doing a random activity. From the fact that the Mishnah had to tell us that he's potter for the drinking, it's because drinking is included in eating. Abai says to Rove, so Abai challenges Rava. He says, okay, so Rava, so your argument is that eating is included in drinking, but ema seifa. But what about the seifa of the Mishnah? Shevuos shelo ochal v'shelo eshte, if he says a shvuah that I won't eat and I won't drink, which is interesting, because if we're saying that drinking is included in eating, okay, so then basically he's making a shvuah twice, right? Okay, he's saying I'm not going to eat, and then he's saying I'm not going to drink, but drinking is basically included in eating, and he already said he's not going to eat, which includes not going to drink. Ein shvuah chol al shvuah. So you should only be chayev once for eating. It's only one shvuah. It's not two shvuahs. Shelo ochal v'shelo eshte. Eshte is included in achila. So shvuah shelo ochal v'shelo eshte, the second one is irrelevant because he's already sworn about drinking from the time that he says shvuah shelo ochal. So we should really only be talking about one shvuah. So again, I'm going to read that again. Abai says to Rove, elamai. Shesiya b'chlal achila? What, you're telling me that drinking is included in eating? Ema seifa, but what about the seifa? What about the next part of the Mishnah? Shevuos shelo ochal v'shelo eshte. If he says, Shevuah that I'm not going to eat, Shevuah that I'm not going to drink, v'ochal v'shasa chayiv shtayim, and he eats and he drinks, he's chayiv twice. But why? There should have only been one Shevuah, not two. Once he makes the Shevuah that he's not going to eat, from that point already, he's also not allowed to drink, because drinking is included in eating. And therefore, when he then says Shevuah shaloi eshte, that's irrelevant. Why is he chai for that? Ilu Omar shaloi eshte trezimne mimechayiv tarte. If he simply would have said Shevuah shaloi eshte, would he be chayiv twice? No, he wouldn't. He would only be chayiv once. In Shevuah chal al Shevuah. So therefore, when he says Shevuah shelo ochal, that already includes shaloi eshte, and then when he says Shevuah shelo eshte, that should be irrelevant. Why is he chayiv twice? He should only be chayiv for one Shevuah. Omerle, so Rava says, you know what the truth is? Says Rava, actually understand the Mishnah the other way around. Shevuah shelo eshte, Shevuah shelo ochal. Okay? First he says Shevuah that I'm not going to drink, which does not include achila. And then, right, because eating includes drinking, drinking does not include eating. So first he's saying Shevuah shelo eshte. And then when he says Shevuah shelo ochal, it's expanding the Shevuah to be for food as well. And since it's a kolel, right, that since it's coming to include more things, food, it's now going to apply as well to the initial thing, drink, and now it's going to be chayiv twice, right? And this is this concept has already come up before. It came up yesterday already, I think. It's going to come up more, I think, right now. Maybe it's going to come up now. I think it might come up now as well. I can't remember. But it's also going to come up later on. It's going to come up a few times. We're really going to dive into it. Maybe in tomorrow's daf. This concept of being kolel, of adding more things into a shvuah, which then applies even to the original things as an additional shvuah. So says Rave that actually what the order is that first he's saying Shevuah shelo eshte, I won't drink, and then he says Shevuah shelo ochal, and because that's now coming to the second shvuah is including food, it also then layers on another shvuah to the original drinks as well. Now, if you drink, you'll be chayiv, so therefore you'll be chayiv for drinking a separate shvuah. So Rav responds, awesome to Omar shalei eshte. First he says, I won't drink, and then he says, I'm not going to eat. The shesiya bichlal achila, because drinking is included in eating, isa, there is. Achila bichlal shesiya lesa. But eating is not included in drinking. And therefore when he says eating, it's coming to include foods, and that will layer on another shvuah to the drinking. Aval Omar shvuah shelo ochal v'shelo eshte. But if he first says that I won't eat, and then he says that I won't drink, ve'ochal v'shasa, and he eats and drink, mai einu chayiv ela achas. So Abaye then challenges Rava further, and he's saying, okay, so Rava, if I understand you correctly, you are telling me that if he says Shevuah shelo ochal, that I'm not going to eat, and then Shevuah shelo eshte, I'm not going to drink, and then he eats and drinks, he'd only be chayiv once, right? Again, right? So Aval Omar, I'm backing up a line. Aval Omar Shevuah shelo ochal v'shelo eshte. If he says I'm not going to eat, and then he says I'm not going to drink, v'ochal v'shasa, and then he eats and drinks, ma einu chayiv ela achas. You tell me he's only going to be chayiv once. There's only really one shvuah there, because the Shevuah shelo eshte didn't add anything. If that's the case, Adutani Reisha, what does the Reisha say, the first part of the Mishnah? Shevuah shelo ochal ve'ochal v'shasa. If he says Shevuah that I'm not going to eat, and then he eats and he drinks, einu chayiv ela achas, he's only chayiv once. Tell me a bigger chiddush. Lesnei Shevuah shelo ochal v'shelo eshte einu chayiv ela achas. Don't just tell me Shevuah shelo ochal ve'ochal v'shasa, he's only chayiv once. Tell me this: Shevuah shelo ochal v'shelo eshte ve'ochal v'shasa, he's still only chayiv once, because the shesiya was already included in the achila. V'chol sheken shelo ochal l'chuden, and certainly if he simply says Shevuah shelo ochal ve'ochal v'shasa einu chayiv ela achas, so ela, rather the olam kidekatoni. No, really, it's like we said initially. Shvuos shelo ochal v'shelo eshte v'ochal v'shoso chayiv shtayim. Right? Right, in that order. He's chayiv shtayim. Shvuos shelo ochal v'shelo eshte chayiv shtayim. V'shayni ochal kiv the omer shelo. And the thing is, okay, so normally we will say, yes, achila is included in shtia. Achila is included in shtia. No, fakir. Shasiya, drinking, is included in eating. Really, drinking is included in eating. Okay, so if drinking is included in eating, so then back to the question of when he says Shevuos shelo ochal v'shelo eshte, so then isn't the shtia already included in the achila? No. V'shayni ochal came to Omar shelo ochal v'ad Omar shelo eshte. Since over here he's saying Shevuos shelo ochal, and then he specified v'shelo eshte. So that means that when he says achila, it's talking about achila. Meaning, when Itamar says to Geva, hey, why don't we go get a bite? And they go and they get pizzas and sodas. So the bite that Itamar was referring to was not just a bite, it was also a drink. However, if Itamar says to Geva, hey Geva, why don't we get a bite and a drink? Okay, clearly then when Itamar says the bite, he's specifically in this context now referring to the pizza, and the drink would be referring to the sodas. Okay, so because he specified Shevuos shelo ochal v'shelo eshte, so yes, by default, if you just talk about achila, it includes shasi as well. Now, if you're going to say Shevuos shelo ochal v'shelo eshte, okay, so clearly then the achila is specifically achila because he's referring to the shasiya when he says Shevuos shelo eshte, and therefore when he eats and he drinks, he's going to be chayiv twice. Ravashi says, Ravashi masnisin amideka. Ravashi wants to argue that you can also infer this from our Mishnah that shasiya is included in achila. Shevuos shelo ochal. If he says it makes it sure that he's not going to eat. Ve'ochal ochlin she'ein ru'uyin la'achila. V'shasa mashkin she'ein ru'uyin l'shasiya. And he ate foods that are not fit for eating, and he drank drinks that are not fit for drinking. Pater ru'uyin chayiv, implying that if they were fit to be drinked, then you would be chayiv, even though all he said was Shevuos shelo ochal ve'amai. And the Gemara says, ha Shevuos shelo ochal. I'm sorry. Ve'amai Shevuos shelo ochal ka'amar. Right. So Ravashi's argument is all he says Shevuos shelo ochal, and yet we're talking about, well, he's pater because the mashkin that he drank are not ruining the shasiya, but if they were ruining the shasiya, it would be chayiv, even though he only said Shevuos shelo ochal. The Gemara says, Dilma, Tomer Tardi Shevuos shelo ochal, Shevuos shelo eshte. The Gemara says, okay, maybe at that point in the Mishnah, you could say it's talking about where he says Shevuos shelo ochal v'shelo eshte, and that's why we're talking about mashkin shem ruining the shasiya. Okay. Beseder. I'm going to eat more coffee. Okay. Shevuos shelo ochal v'ochal paschitin v'chulei. Okay, is this going to be a big daf? I don't know. Maybe. Might be a big daf. Yeah, we'll see. We're actually doing okay. So we said, so the Mishnah said, if he says Shevuos shelo ochal, and then he eats paschitin, pasorin, paskusmin, he's only chayiv once. But if he says Shevuos shelo ochal, paschitin, pasorin, start over. If he says Shevuos shelo ochal, and then he eats paschitin, pasorin, paskusmin, he's only chayiv once. But if he says Shevuos shelo ochal, paschitin, pasorin, paskusmin, and then he eats paschitin, pasorin, paskusmin, he's chayiv for each. He's going to be chayiv 3 korbanos. V'dilma lemifter nafshe machran yoso ka'asi. Frag de Gemara, when he says Shevuos shelo ochal, paschitin, pasorin, paskusmin, why is the Mishnah saying that means that he was making 3 separate Shevuos? Maybe what he's saying is he's limiting the scope of his Shevuah to just paschitin, pasorin, paskusmin. If he says Shevuos shelo ochal, means he's not going to eat anything. So maybe when he says Shevuos shelo ochal, paschitin, pasorin, paskusmin, he's just limiting the scope of that Shevuah to these 3 items. He's not making, it's one Shevuah limited in scope to 3 items. It's not 3 separate Shevuos. Why are we assuming that it's 3 separate Shevuos? So again, maybe by saying Paschitim, Pasorim, Paskusmin, he's not defining 3 Shevuos, he's just coming to define the scope of the Shevuah and to say, but I am going to eat salad. Well, he should have just said, Shevuah shaloi oichal chitin v'sorin v'kusmin. Why do you need pas? Yeah, but maybe if you would say Shevuah shaloi oichal chitin sorin v'kusmin, maybe that means I'm just not going to chew them. Maybe I'm not going to chew wheat stalks, barley stalks, kusmin stalks. Remember, pas chitin v'sorin v'kusmin. Fine. So what he should have said is Shevuah shaloi oichal pas chitin v'sorin v'kusmin. But v'duma pas chitin lechol sorim v'kusmin lachus. Okay, but maybe if it says Shevuah shelo ochal pas chitin v'sorim v'kusmin, maybe it means Shevuah shelo ochal pas chitin. I won't eat wheat bread and I won't chew stalks of barley and spelt. Davalei lemeimar pas chitin v'shel sorim v'shel kusmin. Okay, so he says Shevuah shelo ochal pas chitin v'shel sorim v'shel kusmin. Why did he say pas chitin pas sorim v'kusmin? Okay, v'duma ayde tarovas. But maybe if he says Shevuah shelo ochal pas chitin v'shel sorim v'shel kusmin, I might think what that means is he's making a shvuah that he's not going to eat a bread with 3 different flours: wheat flour, barley flour, spelt flour. That's it. Rapila, you think they sell this kind of a bread in Shuk Machne Yehuda? There's a lot of bread stores there. Maybe they have a wheat barley spelt bread. So ema v'chol v'chein shel sorim v'chein shel kusmin. Pas lo malish mamin l'chalek. Okay, but still the Gemara says, okay, look. If it was one shvuah limited in scope to wheat, barley, and spelt, what he should have said is Shevuah shelo ochal pas chitin v'chein shel sorim v'chein shel kusmin. Why did he say pas chitin, pas sorim, pas kusmin? It's to be mechalek the shvuahs and say 3 shvuahs, and therefore you chayiv for each shvuah. Chayav a korban for each bread that you eat: the wheat bread, the barley bread, the spelt bread. Now the Gemara moves on to the next section of the Mishnah, right? That if he says a shvuah that I'm not going to drink, and then he drinks wine, honey, oil, he's only chayav once. But if he says shvuah shelo ochal, I'm sorry. Right, so if he says Shevuah shelo eshte, and then he drinks these 3 things, he's chayav once. But if he says Shevuah shelo eshte, yayin, v'dvash, v'shemen, he specifies these 3 things, he'll be chayav 3 korbanos. B'shlomo hasam damar miyasrele pas l'chiyuva. In fact, the Gemara, look, I understand. I can accept your argument by the bread because he says pas chitin, pas sorin, pas kusmin. He specified the right pas 3 times, and we said the pas there is to specify 3 separate shvuos. But over here, he's not saying mashke yain, mashke shemen, mashke dvash. He's just saying shvuah shelo eshte, yain, udvash, v'shemen. So the Gemara asks, maybe he's saying one shvuah limited in scope to these 3 beverages. So I understand by bread, you said, well, it says pas 3 times to say 3 separate shvuahs, to indicate 3 separate shvuahs. What should, if he wanted to make one shvuah limited in scope to wine, oil, and honey, how should he have done it? Maybe he's just coming to make himself exempt from other beverages, i.e. that he can eat, that he can drink coffee, right? But he's not saying 3 separate shvuahs. He's saying one shvuah limited in scope to these 3 things, but he can still drink coffee. Says Rav Pope, well, here it's talking about there was an 8-ounce cup of wine in front of him, an 8-ounce cup of oil in front of him, an 8-ounce cup of honey in front of him. And now, what he should have said is, I'm not going to drink these. Why did he have to say, Shevuah she'ochal yayin udvash v'shemen? Say, I'm not going to drink these. So by specifying yayin udvash v'shemen, it's 3 separate shvuahs. V'dilma, eluhu Diloi shasina achrine shasina. But maybe if you would say, I'm not going to drink these, it means literally these 3 cups I won't drink, but other wine, oil, and honey I will drink. So Ela de'amar shvua diloi shasina kigon elu. Well, what he should have said is, I'm not going to drink things like this, which would mean wine, oil, and honey generally. Dilma kigon elu diloi shasina. Wait, where am I? Where am I? Did I skip? Okay, like these, okay. But Dilma kigon elu diloi shasina batzim yachu tvei me'achi shasina. Okay, but if he says like these, I might think, yeah, what does it mean like these? These are 8-ounce cups. Maybe 7 ounces I'll drink, 9 ounces I'll drink. I won't drink these types. I won't drink the wine type, the oil type, the honey type. Maybe it means, okay, so I won't drink these types, but these themselves I will drink. I'll drink the 3 cups in front of me. Okay, fine. So say, I won't drink these and also all of their types. Okay, well, you covered all your bases there. It means you're not going to drink these glasses, nor will you drink wine, oil, and honey. Generally, that's what he should have said, but he didn't. He said, Shvua shelo eshte yain v'dvash v'shemen, even though there's 3 cups right in front of him. Therefore, it's 3 separate shvuas. Rav Achabrei, Rav Ika, Omar, b'mesayir b'chavero askinon. Rav Achabrei says where his friend is hounding him. The Omar lo bov ushisei imi yain v'shemen udvash, and he's saying, right, Itamar is saying to Geva, hey Geva, come on, let's go drink wine and oil and honey. Geva should have just said, I'm not sure that I'm not drinking with you, and that would apply to those things. Yain v'shem dvash lomali l'chayv kolachas v'achas. Why did he have to specify? Why did he specify wine and oil and honey to be mechayiv a korban shvua for each? Tanan Hasam. We learn later on Daf Lamed Vav in Perek Shevuos HaPikodim. That's going to be an interesting Perek probably, because we've been learning about Shevuos HaPikodim since like Bava Kama. I'm just going to eat some more coffee. So now, Tanan Hasam, we learn in the 5th Perek of Masechta Shevuos, Tein li chitin v'soyin v'kusmin sheish l'biyadcha. So now we're going to switch to Reuven and Shimon. You see, for the more technical stuff, we'll use Reuven and Shimon. For eating pizza and sodas, we can use Itamar and Geva. So we learn later on, Tein li chitin v'soyin v'kusmin sheish l'biyadcha. Shimon says to Reuven, give me my wheat, my barley, and my spelt that is in your house. Please give it back to me. Shvua she'en lecha biyadi klum. Reuven responds by saying, Shvua, that I don't have anything. That right there, you don't have anything in my house. So in that case, if he later admits that he was lying, so then in us, I believe that would be, I think that would be an Oshim Gezelis, no? So he would only be chayiv 1 korban. But if what Reuven says is shvua that I don't have wheat, I don't have barley, I don't have spelt, well then it'll be chayiv for each. It'll be chayiv a korban for each of those items. But Rabbi Yochanan says, Rabbi Yochanan, afilu pruta mikulam mitztarefes, that even, I think the point is, even if you only had like, less than a pruta of each item, wheat, barley, spelt, they could join together to create a pruta, right? Because if he makes a shvua about less than a shava pruta, it's irrelevant. But if they could join together to make a pruta, they will join together. Pligi bar Rav Acha, Ravina. Now there's a machlokes between Rav Acha and Ravina. Now, it did come up somewhere, I don't remember where. We said that whenever there's a machlokes Rav Acha and Ravina I think the lenient one is always one of them, and the more stringent one is always the other one. I don't remember who is who. Who's the more lenient opinion? But anyways, Pligiba Rav Acha v'Ravina Chad Omar Aprote Mechayev Aklali Loy Mechayev Chad Omar Aklali Nami Mechayev Ochamai. So the machlokes between Rav Acha and Ravina. The machlokes is that when Reuben says Shvuah that I do not have, right? Shvuah, what does it say? Shvuah she'ein l'cha biyadi chitim v'sorim v'kusmin, and he says wheat and barley and spelt. So the machlokes is, does he bring a korban for just 3 korbanos, right? For wheat, for barley, and for spelt, or do we say 4 korbanos? Because when he says Shvuah she'ein l'cha biyadi, that's like a klal ufrat keilu. That there's the general Shevuos she'ein l'cha biyadi. You don't have anything in my house. And then when he says chitim v'sorim v'kusmin, he then brings an additional 3 korbanos, 1 for chitim, 1 for sorim, 1 for kusmin. Or do we say no? It's just 3 korbanos, 1 right for chitim, for sorim and kusmin, but not for this general korban. And then the interesting thing is that then, in terms of Rabbi Yochanan saying that they joined together to create a Shaveh Pruta, certainly for the individual korbanos, for wheat, for barley, for spelt, you'd have to have a Shaveh Pruta of each of those. But in the Reisha, for example, when he says Shvuah that I don't have anything, so then Rabbi Yochanan would say that the wheat, the barley, and the spelt can join together for Shaveh Pruta. And also, if you say that even in the Seifa, that there's 4 korbanos, 1 for the general one, and then for the specific. So Rabbi Yochanan would also say there for the general one that they could join together for Shaveh Pruta. Anyways, so we see that there's a machlokes there in the 5th parak by the Shevuos HaPikadon of when he says Shevuah she'ein l'cha biyadi chitim v'sorim v'kusmin. There's a machlokes of, is Shevuah she'ein l'cha biyadi a general? Would he be chayiv for that as a 4th one? Or not? Or is it just the 3? So we say, Hachamai, what about here when he says, Shvuah shelo eshte yayin udvash v'shemen? So we say that he's going to be chayiv for each one. Do we also say that he's going to be chayiv for Shvuah shelo eshte being a general one, and he should be chayiv a 4th korban? So Merava says, Rava, look, the thing is, when it comes to Shevuos HaPikadon, each time he swears, he's being kofar mammon another time, and he's going to have to bring another korban for each time, each Shevuah. And therefore, you can have this discussion of, if he says Shvuah she'ein l'cha biyadi, that's a general Shvuah, and then he says chitim v'sorim v'kusmin, those are specific Shvuahs, you can be chayiv 4 times, because every time you're kofar, you're chayiv additionally. However, by Shvuos bitui, which is what we're talking about, as we know, ein Shvuah chal al Shvuah. Right? If you say, as we learned earlier, Shvuah shelo eshte, Shvuah shelo eshte, make the same Shvuah twice, they don't pile on. And therefore, Hacha, in this case, is salka daitech isa bechlala. If it's going to enter your mind that when he says Shvuah shelo eshte, that's sort of a general Shvuah, well then, aprate, for the specifics of yayin, udvash, v'shemen, well then, amay mechayev mushba v'omeru, he already was not allowed to drink those things when he says Shvuah shelo eshte. So therefore, clearly, there is no room for the possibility of 4 korbanos when it comes to Shvuos bitui, because that would, if the 4th korban would be for the general Shvuah, and if we say that that's a general Shvuah, well then the specifics are already sworn about. So the fact that we're saying that you chayiv for the 3, for the wine, the oil, and the honey, so it's specifically those 3 things, not the general Shvuah. Okay, we are going to stop here. I think today was an interesting daf. We learned this new Mishnah about all sorts of when you're chayiv once, when you're chayiv multiple times, eating, drinking included in eating not included in drinking, and how that kind of plays out. Interesting stuff. I'm just going to go finish eating my coffee. Have a good day. Peace out.